and over and over, Harry describes a scenario in which the plane would be falling and he would be sitting there in a panic, and the guy would have to remind him, let's use the instruments, let's fly the aircraft, let's pull ourselves up out of this fall. And he's like, Booley was always interested in telling me it's time, it's time. That was like his catchphrase. And the poor guy is like, it's time, you know? Good morning, how are you? Welcome back to another episode of I'll Spare You the Details. And in this episode, I have to say, we're finally getting back to some stuff that's a little bit more interesting to talk about. You know, full disclosure, you guys, those last two episodes, like I was reading it and thinking, how can I even make this interesting? There's no voice, there's no reenactment, there's no retelling of this mundane, boring, blah, blah, blah story he continues to tell us. I mean, it's random details. I mean, if you watched the last two episodes, it was like random story after random story. And, you know, he did throw in the breakup about Chelsea, which I wanted to know about, so I was happy to hear about that. He did talk about the fact that he had been called a racist in the press because he had used a racial slur without realizing that it was a racial slur. Now, you guys in the comments did tell me, I mean, there's not a way that he could be in Britain and not know that that was a word that you don't use. So as an American, I was like, I don't know, how bad is this? It was bad and he should have known not to say it. So he made a lot of excuses about that. But other than those, like, two things, the breakup and, you know, him dealing with being called racist, like, everything else was just really boring because it all took place in Afghanistan. And, you know, I mean, the comments are like lit up with people saying, this isn't true, this isn't real. We all know he was like Bunker Harry. He played video games, his bodyguards watched him. He was there to play war, but he wasn't there to fight in a war. And I mean, I've never done a deep dive on what Harry was actually doing in Afghanistan, but it stands to reason that he really couldn't have been doing anything that was going to harm him. So, and remember that, because that concept is going to come in later in today's reading, the idea that his life was expendable and that nobody cared about him. And it's like, okay, but yeah, we would believe that if all we knew about your life was from Spare, that, you know, you went and fought just like the rest of them. But we know that's not true. And so it's just some more of his lying, some more of his like carefully selecting details, giving you like partial information, but then, you know, to lead you to some conclusion. I mean, he's so selective in what he shares. It's completely aggravating. Okay. So in today's episode, we're going to be really looking at his immaturity, specifically in areas when he doesn't get what he wants. Like, he didn't even try to couch his behavior in relatable terms. Like, he comes across as super spoiled in this particular section as he's trying to learn how to fly helicopters. Like, story after story, I was like, dude, you were in the driver's seat here, and this is what you chose to tell us about yourself? You know, and he's like 25 years old, you know, so it's not like he's like this petulant little 9-year-old that, you know, still needs some raising. It's, you're 25 years old and you're not getting your way and you're like fussing and whining. The other thing that really comes across here is, of course, everybody always says, oh, well, you know, Harry wasn't very smart. Like, I'm almost sick and tired of hearing people say that. Because I feel like, I don't know that his intelligence was in question, but I believe his work ethic certainly had never been honed to the sharp point that it could have been. And I just really grate against the idea that anybody is stupid. I mean, unless you like have actual cognitive delays, but I really grate against that idea. And maybe it's because I'm a teacher, but it's such a mental handicap as soon as you buy into the idea that you're dumb. And so I just hate that label. I just hate it so much because I don't think anybody is dumb. I really don't. I think that there's going to be some things that you excel at and some things that you don't excel at. But anyway, Harry talks a lot about the fact that everybody thought he was really stupid, but he was here flying helicopters and he passed all the things he needed to pass, and they tested him before they even started the training, and he, you know, he wasn't the thicko that everyone said he was. And so on my heart, in my mind, I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad that he's realizing that he's not stupid. Like, now maybe he'll work hard enough. Like, maybe some people just have to work harder, but it doesn't mean that they're stupid. It means more effort has to go into the same results. Okay, so he starts flying helicopters. But then as he proceeds to tell us how it went when he was flying the helicopters, I thought, I really wanted to come here and believe in you and believe that you weren't dumb, but you're doing and saying things and then recalling it to us, not even realizing how dumb you were acting. It's just like, maybe you are dumb. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of sides of his personality. William comes back into the story. He's got some more jabs for William, so stay tight for that. It just never makes sense. And you guys, it really doesn't make sense when he starts coming for William in this section, because, again, he does the famous Harry thing. La 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 la, it's all so good. They're so great, we're such friends. The stupid idiot! You know, it's just like, incongruent. But anyway, he comes for William again. And you guys, one thing that's come blindingly clear to me here is that Harry, who always wanted to be the clown and make everybody laugh, cannot take a joke. You never saw a more humorless individual. Okay, we start off. Last time Harry was, he had just been smeared, he says, by the press and been called a racist. Okay. And as we talked many a time, well, if you use racist language, it is difficult for people to see you as anything other than. Now, I do hate it when everybody just calls everybody else a racist. I think that's dumb, and I think it undercuts the strength of the word. But it would appear that he should have been more careful with his language. I'm not calling him a racist. I'm just saying, again, Harry, if you don't want people to think a certain thing about you, don't do that certain thing. Everyone says that I'm a drug addict. I mean, I am doing drugs uncontrollably, but I'm not an addict or a drug addict, and nobody should notice. I can't stop taking the drugs, but I'm not a drug addict. Everyone's calling me a racist. I mean, I'm not a racist. Yeah, I say a bunch of slurs I shouldn't all the time, but I'm not a racist. What a wild idea. So, you know, he is really feeling a lot of pressure about that. But it's time for him to go to helicopter training. Okay. Well, he can't be distracted during this. And that's the problem. Like, he's never had good concentration. He's always been out to lunch. Remember when he said the reason he couldn't do well in school is because sitting down to concentrate made him think about Mummy? And during Eton and during school, all he could think about was Mummy. And when was she going to come back? Well, presumably he should have been able to put that to rest. But anyway, because he never practiced concentration in school, now that he has to concentrate some more during this 2-year, slog to fly helicopters, he doesn't know how to concentrate. He doesn't know how to do school. He's got this little aside. And so as he's talking about how he went to RAF Barkston Heath, and he began his flight training. They probed his mind and body to make sure he was going to be okay and that he could manage these tasks. And he gleefully tells us, drug-free, they concluded. They seem surprised. Well, aren't we all? He says that, also, videos to the contrary notwithstanding, I'm not a total thicko. Well, on the very next page, a different story is told. So he starts talking about how he is paired up with this guy named Sergeant Major Booley. And he's not flying helicopters yet. Oh no. He's going to fly a little prop plane, a little yellow prop plane called a Firefly. Now, Booley has won for himself many crowns in heaven, because when Harry goes on to explain the relationship that they had in this plane together as Harry was trying to learn how to fly, I cannot imagine the patience and the long suffering that this man withstood trying to teach Harry how to fly. Okay, so they're up in the sky, they're flying, right? Okay, then Harry goes on to describe this, and the only thing I could think was, have you been a human in the world for longer than 5 minutes? Like, why this? He's going to go on to explain this shocking scenario. And I'm reading it thinking, I'm shocked that you're shocked. This harkens back to the will, when he was shocked that they were going to make him write his will. It's like, Harry, are you this sheltered from reality. Can you not imagine? He seems to have no powers of imagination. Okay, so they go up on the plane, and he says that on one of our first flights together, with no warning, Booley threw the aircraft into a stall. I felt the left wing dip, a sickening feeling of disorder, of entropy, and then, after several seconds that felt like decades, he recovered the aircraft and leveled the wings. I stared at him. What in the absolute... Was this an aborted suicide attempt? No, he said gently. This was the next stage in my training. And he says countless things can go wrong in the air, he explained. And he needed to show me what to do, but also how to do it. Obviously, Harry. Then we went into a stall, and I was like, is he trying to attempt suicide? Oh my God, he's trying to kill himself and me. No, he's actually teaching you how to fly the aircraft. And sometimes things don't go right. And what will you do if they don't? Has he never imagined that going up in the plane, the instructor would say, now we're going to run some problems in which things don't go wonderfully well. Anyway, then he goes on about how every time they'd go up in the plane, Booley would do it again, over and over and over. They would fall through the air, and then Booley would tell him, it's time. And Harry would look at him, time for what? What are you talking about? We're falling through the air. What time is it? Time to fix the aircraft and pull it up. That time. And the guy, like, over and over and over, Harry describes a scenario in which the plane would be falling and he would be sitting there in a panic, and the guy would have to remind him, let's use the instruments. Let's fly the aircraft. Let's pull ourselves up out of this fall. And he's like, Booley was always interested in telling me it's time, it's time. That was like his catchphrase. And the poor guy is like, it's time, you know? He had like a catchphrase, always telling me it was time. That guy in time. Anyway, so one of the things that really disappointed him was that whenever he managed to do something right, there was no fanfare. Booley didn't make a thing of it. Booley wasn't clapping him on the back. Booley wasn't being like, good on you, mate. It was all, glad you did your job. For once. Glad you weren't panicking. For once. And so, you know, the entire section is like this liturgy between the pilot and Harry. What's the matter? It's time, Lieutenant Wales. Time for your solo. Oh, okay. Literally, he writes this. And it's like over and over and over. It's like the liturgy of the insane. We're falling out of the sky. You're the one in the control seat. Fly the plane. Time for what? Okay, so he finally gets a chance to fly the plane by himself. It goes well. He, again, wants fanfare, parades. Where's his ticker tape parade, he'd like to know? There isn't any. He just did his job. And he's sort of surly about the fact that it just went on without notice. This guy has got to be praised, clapped on the back, hugged, kissed, cajoled. Like, there has to be, he constantly needs people to mark his success for him. He contains no ability to be proud of himself. All right, so then he goes on to talk about how it was time now to learn how to actually fly helicopters, and was under Majors Lazelle and Mitchell, and they taught him how to land a helicopter, which was the most difficult part of flying a helicopter, because when you're hovering, there is something that Harry describes as hover monkeys. So it's this phenomenon where just above the ground, a helicopter falls prey to fiendish confluence of factors: airflow, downdraft, gravity. First it wobbles, and then it rocks, and then it pitches, and it yaws, and as if invisible monkeys are hanging from both its skids, yanking. And to land a helicopter, you have to shake off these hover monkeys, and the only way to do that is by ignoring them. So it was like the big test, like everybody in the class was struggling, everybody was failing. But of course, when it's time for him to land the plane during his final test, he does it, though one of his classmates had a crash landing and brought in the ambulances and whatnot. So, you know, he's the hero, but no one seems to notice. Now we come to William. So he says that at this time, William was also learning how to fly helicopters. And so William had found a cottage about 10 minutes away from the base. And it was on somebody's estate, and he was living there. And Harry writes, he found a cottage 10 minutes from the base on someone's estate and invited me to stay with him. Or maybe I invited myself. But either way, it wrecks his story. Whether William extended the hand of friendship and said, hey, come live with me, I'm so close, and we're both at school right now. Okay, that blows up his idea that the arch nemesis was, you know, barking at his heels 24/7, trying to ruin his life. If Harry felt the freedom to invite himself to stay, again, doesn't work if you're trying to make me believe that William was this person who hated you, couldn't stand being around you, who tried to brush you off at every turn. Doesn't work. So even with this sorry little sentence, maybe I invited myself. Okay, I don't know what you're trying to tell me here, but it's not congruent with everything else you keep trying to throw at us about William. So he said it was like the best time of his life. And he said that the fridge was packed with food from Pa's chef, so there was tons of food to eat. It was like this cute little cottage. It was right down the road. There was horses behind. It was like, you know, you just picture this gorgeous little English cottage. But one of the crowning features of this era was the fact that the journalists who he had believed were coming after him relentlessly, and who he had feared that there was a friend in the group who was feeding information to the press, lo and behold, come to find out, the press had tapped their phones and were snatching bits of information from texts and phone calls and all this kind of stuff. Okay, definitely major breach from the journalists. I have sympathy for Harry to a certain degree when he talks about the morbidity of the press. Right? And I can understand that this would have been really an exciting time, but just, you know, he goes back to calling, remember like way back in several episodes when he had hurt his thumb and he was eaten and they wrote a story about it and he was just like bowled over by it, the fact that they would write the story. And then he goes like on this long jag about what a bad writer the guy was. It's like such a distasteful passage. And then remember old rehabber Kooks? Okay, so like, apparently she was in on all of this with Rupert Murdoch's The News of the World. He is just like, goes on for like 3 gleeful pages about the fact that they were getting theirs. And just the way he writes about it is just so annoying. Like, he goes, among the soon-to-be exposed villains was the Thumb, that bad journalist who long ago published an absurd non-story about my thumb injury at Eton. I'd healed up nicely, but the Thumb had never mended its ways. On the contrary, he got a whole lot worse. He'd moved up the ranks of the newspaper world, becoming a boss with a whole team of thumbs at his command. Under his thumb? Many of them hacking willy-nilly into people's phones. Blatant criminality, which the Thumb claimed laughably to know nothing about. Also going down, rehabber Kooks, the same loathsome editor who'd cooked up my rehab charade. She'd been resigned. Resigned? 2 days later, the cops arrested her. And, you know, he's like going on and on about during the wildest crime spree in British history. You know, finally some justice. He was just over the moon about it, overjoyed. And it just went to make this whole time with him and William even that much more beautiful and wonderful, because finally their greatest enemy was being taken down in the prime of their lives. So, you know, he goes on a jag about, you know, democracy's in a sorry state if the journalists can't be trusted. Well, that's true enough. He goes on about how, you know, the death rattles coming from the most popular Sunday paper, the News of the World, was the leading culprit in the hacking scandal, and its very survival was in doubt. Advertisers were talking about fleeing, readers were talking about boycotts. Was it possible Murdoch's baby, his grotesque, 2-headed circus baby, might finally implode? It's just the way he writes about it is so annoying to me. It's just not good writing. I mean, I can only go on and on about this for so long. But like, the whole team of thumbs at his command. Under his thumb? The grotesque 2-headed circus baby. What are you talking about? This is so lame. Anyway, so, I mean, he's just over there having a heyday with the fact that everyone's going to prison. And I'm sure it was really, what's the word? Gratifying. I'm sure it was gratifying to finally to figure out what had been going on. That would have been super annoying. Okay, now we come to the part where Harry can't take a joke. As always, we remember the biro pen. Okay, so jokes are not to be had with Harry. He's the joke teller, you guys, okay? He tells the jokes. You don't tell the jokes. He says that one day, while they were both training, they decided to give an interview, a joint interview, and he and William. And it was at the airplane hangar in Chaubury, and Willie, he says, threw him right under the bus. I mean, what? He said that Willie said that he just went on and griped about all his bad habits. He said that Harry was a slob, and then Harry snored. Harry says, I turned and gave him a look. Was he joking? I pick up after myself, right? I don't leave things just lying around, and I don't snore, and even if I did, the walls are too thick for you to hear. You're making things up to get a laugh, that's what it is. And so he says that he was irate, although it seems in retrospect he was irate. Like, it seems like at the time he handled it. He goes, I cleaned up after myself. I didn't snore. Besides, our rooms were separated by thick walls. So even if I did snore, there was no way he heard. The reporters were having fits of giggles about it all. But I cut in. Lies! Lies! And that only made them laugh harder. Willie, too! I laughed as well, because we often bantered like that. But when I look back on it now, I can't help but wonder if there wasn't something else at play. I was training to go to the front lines, the same place Willie had been training to get, but the palace had scuttled his plans. The spare, sure. Let him run around a battlefield like a chicken with his head cut off, if that's what he likes. But the heir, no. Okay, Harry, stop! Stop with the stupidity. I cannot even with this. I'm training to go to the front lines. William wanted to, but he can't. So that's why he's trying to like undercut me. No, that's not why. He's joking. Like, you're just trying to give a bit of fun to the reporters, you know? And he is sophisticated enough to realize that what the reporters want is to see the brother dynamic. And what group of guys doesn't kind of like it? I don't know a group of guys whose humor isn't to kind of like go after each other. It's just like how they do. And I think William was just trying to make it lighthearted, knowing or believing falsely that Harry could take it. Well, Harry couldn't take it, and he's over here just like, he says he laughed then. So why aren't you laughing now? Like, why are you going back, like through all the archives of every little bit that has ever been said or recorded about you, and, you know, ripping open wounds and digging around in them and then being like, I'm so hurt. It's like, you're hurting yourself. You weren't even hurt then. You're choosing to go back and be upset. That kind of lifestyle does not make sense to me. Okay, so he says that Willie was just jealous. And then he goes on this little jag. He says, so Willie was now training to be a search and rescue pilot, and perhaps feeling quietly frustrated about it. In which case, he was seeing it all wrong. He was doing remarkable, vital work, I thought, saving lives every week. I was proud of him, and full of respect for the way he was dedicating himself wholeheartedly to his preparation. You know, and here we have this little manipulative passage in which the lover is trying to defend the abuser. And where it's like the story as old as time. Like, here he is trying to act like, Willie was so hateful to me. And Willie was always trying to undercut me. But I wasn't like that. I saw who he was. I saw he was trying really hard to do something that was difficult and worthy of praise. And I didn't care if he was going to be mean to me. Because I'm going to praise him anyway. I'm going to see the good, even if he can't see the good in me. Please. Okay, so then he goes on to describe a time, like, so now he's done learning how to fly just a helicopter, like a generic sort of helicopter. But now he is going to have to work on flying tactically. Okay, so now he can fly a helicopter, but can he fly a helicopter doing a bunch of different things? Remains to be seen. And to lead his, to lead him onto this harrowing journey, is a man named Nigel. Now, Nigel's sole goal is to teach him how to concentrate. Because as we know, Harry can't concentrate. So he's flying around in this little plane, this little French-made squirrel, they call it. And Nigel says that that he needed to focus less on the actual squirrel helicopter in which we sat, but the squirrels inside his head. The head squirrels were the ancient enemies of human concentration, Nigel assured me. More devious than the hover monkeys, he said. They were far more dangerous. This guy seems only to be able to understand something as long as an animal is involved. The leopard, the fox, the monkey, the squirrels. Somebody take this baby to the zoo. Okay, so Nigel is trying to tell him that confidence is the way to fly a helicopter. Like, you have to believe that you are capable, or else it's going to end up a failure. Well, Harry has never been confident a day in his life. He came out of the womb completely hating himself. So to be tasked with this is beyond his wildest imagination, which is already quite limited. And he says that he kept, like, every time they would go up, he'd make one mistake and he would just implode. Like, he just could not carry on. And Nigel would keep telling him, look, we cannot let one mistake ruin a flight, but one mistake ruined many a flight. He would just completely break down, be upset, refuse to fly the aircraft. And Nigel would be like, you're taking this plane, or you're taking this helicopter down. You don't have a choice to just decide you're not going to do it. I'm not offering that option to you, so pull it together. But time and time again, this would happen. And he could not take any kind of criticism. Like, it completely derailed him, and he could not concentrate. Nigel was not in the habit of coddling Harry, regardless of who he was. Didn't matter to him that he was a Prince of England, and he told Harry how it was. And after they would fly, they would debrief. And Harry, all Harry wanted to do was, like, go to sleep after a flight because it had just been such a stressful episode. And that wasn't, I mean, Nigel wasn't here for that. Nigel was like, no, we're going to talk about what you did, and we're going to talk about why you did it wrong. And he says, this was where Nige the ninja really put me through it, because he sugarcoated nothing. He spoke bluntly and wounded blithely. There were things I needed to hear, and he didn't care about his tone when he told me. I got defensive. He pressed on. I shot him, hate you forever stares. He pressed on. I said, yeah, I get it. He pressed on. I stopped listening. Poor Nige. He pressed on. He was, I realize now, one of the most truthful people I've ever known, and he knew a secret about truth that many people are unwilling to accept. It's usually painful. He wanted me to believe in myself, but that belief could never be based on false promises or fake compliments. The royal road to mastery was paved with facts. And it's like, yeah, that's the hard thing about it. Truth often is the last thing we want to hear, which is why we are so good at lying to ourselves. But I guess I just wish that there was more. What would have made this book so much more interesting is if there was some kind of self-reflection. You know, because I just wish that he would, for like, just for a few minutes, just like, not even a whole paragraph, just a sentence in which he talks about, like, how annoying he was. Like, that this guy has been tasked to train him to fly helicopters. I think he said he wanted to do. And he's just fighting the guy. Fighting. So he just comes across as such a baby. And it doesn't get better. Because he says that once he got done with Nigel, then it was time for him to go fly Apaches. The army wanted him to fly Apaches. Okay, well, this wasn't the news he wanted to hear. He said that when they told him he was going to fly Apaches, what that really meant was he was going to go sit in a classroom and learn about Apaches. Okay, well, this helicopter isn't a joke, son. You better learn a few things about how to fly one. You're going to need to sit in that classroom for a long time before you're ever ready to get into one, okay? But he's over there just sour as can be. And he says that, he's like, could anything be crueler? Promise me a helicopter, hand me a stack of homework. Oh, what in the world? What in the world? Bloody hell. All I want to do is fly a helicopter, and all they want to do is to give me homework and classroom time. How dare they not put me into a multi-million-dollar machine and let me just take to the skies? How dare they? So he says the course lasted for 3 months, during which he nearly went insane. Wasn't he already there? Wouldn't have been a long trip. He says every night he'd slump back to his cell-like room in the officer's mess and vent to his mate on the phone or else to his bodyguard. So it's like nobody is free of his complaining. I mean, you better lock the phone up at night so that as soon as he's out of school, he's calling you to cry and whine. Can you imagine the life of that bodyguard? Every night here he comes back, I still have to do school today. I still have to do work. And he says that the thing that he never wanted to fly Apaches. He said to everyone, petulantly, he even admits he was petulant, I wanted to fly the Lynx. It was simpler to learn, and I'd get back to war faster. But my commanding officer, Colonel David Meyer, quashed that idea. No chance, Harry. Why, Colonel, why? Because you've had operational ground experience and reconnaissance, you're a very fine FAC, and you're a bloody good pilot. You're going to fly Apaches. But I can tell from the way you fly, the way you read the ground, this is what you're meant to do. Meant to do? The course was torture. It's like, all right, well, just, like, it's what you have to do. This is what I'm saying. He's not stupid. He's just lazy as all get out. Lazy, lazy, lazy. And then he says that one of the things that was the most frustrating for him was that when he was flying Apaches, he had been used to, in all his previous training, the instructor sat exactly next to him and could step in when all was going to hell in a handbasket. But there was nobody to step in for him. And he was freaking out about that because the way the instructor sat, he was either way behind or way in front of Harry. And so that made Harry feel panicky. And he says that more than most people, he needed a guide, a guru, a partner. But I call foul on that. You don't need a guide, a guru, or a partner. You want somebody to do everything for you. It's the same thing as when he was planning his gap year. It's like he's just sitting there fumbling, hemming and hawing, twiddling his thumbs, and Marco comes with a plan. He can't ever decide for himself. Can't decide how he's supposed to think about himself. He can't decide what he's supposed to do next. He can't decide what to eat next. Pa's chefs have to fill his fridge with food. He is so babied. He is so coddled. This entire section was him being like, no one was patting me on the back when I was doing a good job. I wasn't allowed to just have complete and total meltdown and tantrum baby fits in the helicopter. I would try it every time. They wouldn't let me get away with it. I hated flying Apaches because the instructor wasn't right there, and it made me feel insecure because I need somebody by my side all the time. Like, literally, he says this. And it's like, well, no wonder you're a miserable individual. And no wonder Meghan Markle came in like she did. Because it's like, can you imagine how easy... Harry was the easiest prey that has ever walked the earth. It all makes sense now. Why Meghan and Harry are, every time you see them, it's just this grotesque display of affection. At their age and in their station in life, we didn't need to see them pawing all over each other all the time. But it's like Meghan comes into his life and feeds into this lie that you've always been alone, you've never been hugged enough, you've never been loved enough, but I'll do it. And I'll break protocol so that you feel loved. I mean, and anybody with an ounce of brain cells could see I am being manipulated. Like in a moment of reality, like when you're not like, in the haze of love, when things aren't going well between you and your partner and you sit back and you start thinking like, when did things go off the rails? Anybody who can think would be like, you know what? Seems like they were always telling me exactly what I wanted to hear. It seemed like I would tell them a detail about my life and then they were kind of played into it all the time. But Harry had never possessed the ability to do that. And Meghan, it's just like it's frightening in a lot of ways, the way she has taken over and either rebuilt his memory or took all the pain points in his life and convinced him that she was the doctor. I would love to read a book about the process that she has taken, study on Meghan Markle and who she is as a person and the things that she has done in Harry's life. I mean, that's the crime. Like, I know Harry's a grown adult, but if he truly is so emotionally stunted that he cannot see when he's being manipulated, it makes me feel like I would love to read a study about what she did and how she played him. I mean, and I guess we can all see how it's happening, but you know, you just read this book, and I mean, he's just would be the easiest person to manipulate in the world, and the tragedy that he thinks it's everybody else except for the woman that's in his bed. I mean, that is a chilling story, and that is a book that I wish I was reading about, but unfortunately, we've got ourselves stuck with Spare for a while. I can't wait till Meghan comes in. I mean, I can't wait to start talking about that. But for right now, we got to get through all this Apache foolishness. I have continued to hear in the comments that he never even got through training. I don't know what he's going to claim in the book. And as I've also said many times, I know that, I mean, there is so much information. There's so many videos, there's so many channels, there's articles. There's so much stuff that we could be looking at. But I am looking at this book as just standalone material. Like, what is Harry presenting to the world about himself? He said, this is my story, read it, and understand me. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I am really trying not to get into all the gossip. I mean, I love the gossip. Like, put the gossip in the comments, you guys. Like, I don't know. Tell me what's the real story? Like, that's fine. But as far as these videos go, I'm trying really just to look at like what he's presenting to me in this book, in this primary source of his life. And he's not coming off very well at all. Okay, I will see you guys on Sunday for another video. Until then, have a lovely weekend. Bye.